Welcome, everyone. Today, we are on the third and final day of MARUF sessions. And in this session, we're going to be talking about migration and local development, refugees in labor markets. And we're going to spend an hour and a half together. So our session is, as I've mentioned, is going to cover local development, the integration of refugees into local markets. And in this sense, we have Docent Dr. Gökçe Uysal from Bahçeşehir University. She's a research assistant there. At the same time, we are going to be listening to the best practices from different municipalities, from Belgium, from Germany, and from Turkey. Here with us, Mr. Halil İbrahim Akıncı, Director of Social Services at Sultanbeyli Municipality. We have from Ankara Metropolitan Municipality, project branches, the Director Ömer Faruk Sarı is here. Welcome. From Germany, Han Municipality, we have Yasemin Soysal. And finally, sorry, the former one was Belgium, I'm sorry. Now from Osnabrück, Integration, Social Services and Participation Director, Ms. Seda Turgut, is going to be with us. First and foremost, I would like to note, before starting the session, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Sümeyye Gedikoğlu Doğan. I will be moderating this session. I am also coordinating the Union of Migration Endeavors, and I would like to tell you a little bit about our center, because we're going to be talking about local development, but municipalities ensure this integration, these local development endeavors, and as an institution, we try to support municipalities in such activities. This integration center was established about a year and a half ago. Our main purpose of foundation was to focus on migration because migration is going to be a field of study for municipalities in near future. And that was the basic idea behind our foundation purpose. And we wanted to build a more sustainable roof over these studies. That's why we have our Migration Integration Center, where we carry out different activities, especially migration management and relevant administrative, institutional, and legislative recommendations are prepared. As you are well aware, we are carrying out a Restock project, and I know that it's been covered in various sessions. So we have a platform set up for such endeavors. So on a local level, we work with technical teams and municipality staff. We revealed issues so that we can set up some solutions aimed at them. They were later approved by municipalities, mayors, and this generated a beautiful roadmap for us. Other activities of our center include migration and integration studies, adaptation for such processes, auditing and supervision endeavors, and creating a platform for them. Also about migration, collecting and analyzing data, preparing relevant reports, conducting research studies, are among other activities that we carry out. We're now working on a database in order for different municipalities to see what other municipalities have been doing, so that seeing others, experiential learning can be conducted, because municipalities will get to see what other municipalities are doing and what they basically need in their own municipalities. So this database project is still ongoing. On local and on national and international levels, we also want best practices to become more common so that everyone can learn from each other. There are still ongoing studies about them. And in order to support migration capacities of municipalities, we also hold different types of meetings, such as seminars, conferences, and panels, sometimes or workshops. Sometimes we do them at our own capacity. Sometimes we cooperate with different institutions, and from time to time we conduct we organize such events. On a migration level, I also have to note that we represent our municipality in various events, but at the same time, we also advise different organizations in terms of which municipality would represent the best practice in a particular field. So we have meetings. We basically provide consultancy to different municipalities and for organization committees for such events. NGOs, universities, national and international organizations should be included for collaborative purposes, and we try to cooperate such collaborations as well. On a national level, we attempt to contribute to the setting up of action plans for different municipalities. As you know, there is an integration strategy document on a national level, which reveals what is being done on a national level. But of course, municipalities must be informed as to what has been done and what's in process. And
since municipalities are the key actors in such field, they also must know expectations from them, which is why we aim to inform them. So we had two meetings for this purpose. One is for municipalities in the eastern region, and one was for municipalities in the western regions under the auspices of migration administration. And also, finally, we would like to facilitate the cooperation and lobbying activities between different municipalities. So sometimes we conduct some projects and we then want municipalities to be involved. But in order to facilitate such cooperation, and when public institutions or municipalities are included, we highlight the fact that lobbying activities are needed because local administrations would know local problems the best. So this is what we do at our integration center. So that's what I wanted to highlight, because we're going to talk about local development, and we support local development by empowering municipalities and facilitating certain activities for them. Integration of refugees to labor market, local labor markets, is a topic that we talk about when we also have to think about national activities, because central administration is directly responsible from such activities. To that end, municipalities play the role of facilitation and mentorship, of course. That might be how it is perceived, but you're going to see in the best practices that sometimes municipalities even match employees and employers. In other words, it is one step beyond merely facilitating, because as you all know, municipalities provide services to citizens on the closest level. So whatever the need is, services may be shaped in accordance with them. Especially in Turkey, this is how the structure works. But when the structures are more flexible, they would adapt to status quo more easily. So that's what I wanted to say in my introduction. Having said that, I would like to give the floor to Doçent Dr. Gökçe Uysal. She is working on the integration of refugees, to local labor markets. She's an economist and she works on a labor market, especially with respect to disadvantaged groups such as women, refugees, and youth. Recently, since COVID-19 pandemic has recently, she has been focusing on COVID-19's impact on household and household economics. She has multiple articles and research reports published in international journals. The floor is yours. Thank you very much. Thank you. So, like you said, I would like to begin by drawing a general framework, labor market in Turkish labor market, how it's doing, and what kind of problems it faces. So, as you have mentioned,
we mostly work on refugees, women, and youth, who are the disadvantaged groups, because they have to face the structural issues of the labor market. And I think my presentation is going to give you an idea about how they overcome or how they manage these problems. So, in comparison with developed countries or countries with higher income, Turkish labor market yields more challenges. So structurally speaking, Turkish labor market yields more unemployment rates than any other developed country. So this is not only because of lack of skill or qualification, but there's also a matching issue there, the lack of matching between employers and employees. So a reflection of this situation can be observed in the recent years. According to my estimations, it started long before the pandemic. There has been the notion of unemployment, which means that those who are unemployed remain unemployed for a long time. So I'm not only talking about agricultural workers or self-employed individuals, but I'm talking about all unregistered or irregular workers. This is also common in paid workers as well, paid employees as well. So educational levels are low, vocational trainings also do not remove the lack of skill that we're talking about. So vocational trainings are provided, but firms either find it inadequate or irrelevant. So there is an inadequacy in question. Like I said, there are horizontally crossing groups, so all of them are disadvantaged, but mainly we're talking about women, young people, and refugees. So on top of this, there are certain other issues concerning refugees. So let's talk about a few examples. Let's think about the educational levels. Their educational levels, according to research studies, are lower than Turkish nationals, or their skills or qualifications are more difficult to be recognized in Turkey. So employment processes are relatively more difficult for refugees. So let me give you an example. For a Syrian refugee's diploma, university, or a bachelor's degree to be recognized by an employer, that there are certain bureaucratic issues and they are not exactly converted, or most of the time the research studies in the field show us that employers do not find it compliant with the Turkish labor market. So there are certain social complaints filed about that. Employers are having a difficult time in social integration, and we can guess that some of these issues are related to linguistic barriers. Specifically, disadvantaged groups such as women and young people, or in groups where they all come together, for example, young female refugees, specifically that would be more difficult for such groups. Refugees are having a harder time finding a job in labor market, and when they work for lower wages. So, what about integration? What can be done for the integration purposes to the labor market? What does everybody want? So on one hand, we want firms to frantically look for employees, and they are searching so hard that they cannot find a sufficient number of employees. So we also want this integration to be as smooth as possible. Furthermore, there are migrants coming in from abroad, and there are funds spent for this purpose. And everyone wants to, of course, we all want to be registered workers, registered employees, right? Everyone in Turkey, everyone who's working in Turkey should be registered in the labor market. I'm not only saying this for refugees, of course. So this is quite challenging. And the main reason as to why this is challenging is because it's not because refugees are not registered. I mean, legally speaking, a refugee can become a registered employee. I mean, Syrians under temporary protection can be registered employees once bureaucratic steps are taken by the employer. So there is a particular cost, but it's quite affordable. And they do have access, Syrian refugees do have access to registered employment. But because of the firm situation, this phenomenon is not easy at all, especially lately, the funds coming in from the European Union have been
inadequate in creating employment in vocational training groups. So why is it not working? Let's talk a little bit, maybe I can talk a little bit about that. For one thing, like I've mentioned, in vocational training, I mean in Turkey, when you think about the existing system, vocational training is not quite efficient. So on one hand, we have firms, we have companies that do not find vocational training sufficient because they think that it doesn't give you the necessary skills for the particular employment. On the other hand, vocational training is quite expensive, especially when you think about it from the industrial side. You have to buy machinery, you have to train people in situ. So there are bigger question marks when it comes to certain services. So maybe we'll come back to that. So there might be certain certification problems, coordination problems. These are things that we have heard about in the field. For example, you might go to the firms. You can find them because, you can visit the headquarters. We ask them, what do you need? They list the skills, and in the next stage, people must be found to fulfill this need for such skills. So these people are found, they are trained, but on the other hand, when it comes to the supply, this coordination is much more challenging. We constantly provide the same training for different people, but who is receiving what kind of training? Normally, İşkur institution should be following up on this process, but this coordination, unfortunately, does not work super smoothly all the time. Number two is when it comes to the labor market in Turkey, and when it's specifically when we're talking about registered employment, firms are having a hard time and having a lot of issues when it comes to creating registered employment. This is a more different issue. Maybe we can talk about some sub-areas underneath this topic. Of course, this is a central topic first and foremost, but taxes are quite high when it comes to workforce in Turkey. Number two is minimum wage is very close to average wage. So when minimum wage is raised, small-scale firms tend to go bankrupt. Which means that as a social policy, we have to think more about the link between economic link between minimum wage and average wage. And number three, so without further ado, maybe this is going to help us maybe find the right path to solution. Number three is, let's put it this way, if vocational training is not working as it's supposed to work, prior research and experiences show us that we might work with matching. What do I mean by matching? So on one hand, we have open positions, on the other we have skilled workers, so we have to be able to match them. This is an important area for policy, and normally İşkur has offices that are specifically working on this topic, but I think municipalities especially, from a legislation framework, and I'm sure other participants are going to cover this. This is not really what municipalities do exactly, but on a local level, they can reach local firms and local potential employees. So municipalities would gain importance from this perspective. So if municipalities can accurately match people who want to work and firms with open positions, this might even work better, because instead of purchasing machinery or trying to provide different types of vocational trainings, this would be with much lower costs. Furthermore, we can use more human labor, maybe because at this point, people would start working as consultants. So, as an economist, if you ask me, and as someone who's working specifically on the labor market, I think you can see that municipalities are working quite efficiently in certain cases, especially when it comes to service provision. They are playing an incredibly important role in the industry. 50% of Turkish population work in the service industry, and unfortunately, So I was frozen for a moment. Sorry, I had a connection problem. Sorry. So I think I'm almost out of time anyway. Very briefly, let me note something else. Services play an important role in the Turkish labor market, and when it comes to service provision, this matching endeavors and human relations become even more important. So instead of knowing how to use machinery, they would know how to communicate with customers or how to work the cash register. So these are points that become more important in these matching services. And that is why I am saying that whether it's their duty or not, municipalities can play a very productive role in this endeavor. Thank you very much. We would like to thank Docent Dr. Gökçe Uysal, researcher. She has talked about structural issues in the Turkish labor market, and as she has noted at the very end, these vocational training, in order for vocational trainings to succeed, a matching or twinning process is needed. At this point, as we're going to see in best practices, municipalities are important actors. So maybe, having said that, we can move on to the first example of best practice from Ankara Metropolitan Municipality Project Branches Director, Mr. Ömer Faruk Sarı is here with us. After working in different sectors, and as of 2019, he started working as a specialist of foreign affairs and chief of EU relations at Ankara institutions, at government institutions in Ankara. He is also working on projects for Turkish residents and refugees, and he also works in his expertise lies in facilitating FAO-led and other institutions-led projects, violence against women, gender equality, children who work on the street, hearing impaired, and social networks' impact on social mental health. He designs projects and executes projects, and to that end, he has provided a lot of trainings across Turkey. He also works in different NGO activities, and he is included in different initiatives for the inclusion of young people. He's married with 2 kids. Mr. Ömer Faruk, the floor is yours. Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone from the capital, Ankara, with my warmest greetings. So a lot of important things have been mentioned by Ms. Gökçe Uysal, especially she talked about the challenges in the Turkish labor market. And she talked about vulnerable groups with multiple disadvantages, and how they can find a place for themselves in the labor market. So in my presentation, I actually would like to focus a little bit on how we try to overcome such challenges, and including refugees, how we are working with our citizens, taking advantage of the courses that we provide for them. So there are certain sections of the presentation that I will quickly skip over, because I would like to share the best practices, and I think this is much better in all meetings. So now let's move on to the presentation, if you will. So as Ankara Metropolitan Municipality, we have been conducting a lot of projects. These are some of the projects that I would like to note, and since we're going to talk about employment, I specifically wanted to focus on the projects based on these topics. So right now, there are 4 main projects that are currently underway. Some of them are still in the stage of signing the agreement. One is UMEM, International Vocational Training Center. So these projects can be found in detail on our website. One is about employment and vocational training. Another project is called the Support Center for Women and Youth. This is solely focused on employment for women and young people. We have another project in collaboration with FAO. It's a cooperative for bakery products concerning their production and marketing, and we also have a Women's Empowerment Center with the Embassy of Netherlands. So our International Vocational Training Center provides trainings in in a number of fields specifically needed by the labor market, so that people attending the courses can easily find a job in such sectors. Of course, for trainees, the most important issue is the language barrier. So first, they are provided a language training for 3 months, and then they start their vocational trainings. Of course, the selection of trainees and their programs and their potential employment after they finish the course are important criteria for how they are selected. Our vocational training center was founded in 2018. Once the construction of the building was complete, we immediately started our activities. We had to take a mandatory break because of the pandemic. Aside from the mandatory lockdowns, we carried on with the courses. Of course, remote training is really not preferred in vocational trainings, but we did our best under the circumstances of the pandemic, especially especially groups including refugees. Were organized face-to-face because refugees often have difficulties in accessing remote learning because they need computer, internet connection, and they might face other issues. So as the previous speaker has mentioned already, we also have to provide trainings by thinking about the reputation of the center in the employment sector. So to that end, we have met with a lot of different firms in different fields. We invite them to the center so that they can see the quality of training we provide at our International Vocational Training Center. Naturally, providing psychosocial support and in order to include women, providing childcare throughout their training. We are working by keeping them in mind too, and we support them in such endeavors. Of course, after COVID, we provide warnings regularly. I actually have a video, but I don't think I can share it with you right now. So you can find it on the website, and you can find brief information about our center and services. So I just use the images to basically give you an idea. So what makes what we do is more meaningful can be summarized with a few programs. So in order to integrate our trainees for employment, we help them in CV preparing, interview techniques, handling stress in business life, communication skills, problem-solving techniques, etc. So first, we started a graduate follow-up program in order to track whether or not they were employed. So we realized that we had about 25–30% employment rates of our trainees. Graduates, sorry. So municipalities really do play a guiding and facilitating role in these endeavors. We talk to a lot of firms, sometimes in physical settings, sometimes on digital environments. So thanks to these trainings that we provide, we talk to firms about the potential fields on which we have to provide trainings. For instance, in textile, in textile, we can talk to companies and we can provide suitable training so that our trainees, once they graduate, they are not found with inadequate skills. So then we evaluate a 3-month performance. In June, July, and August, we have seen that about 150 trainees, in addition to our refugees, were ready to be guided to employment. Of course, while we do that, we have to think about potential employers' satisfaction, and we also have to evaluate psychosocial adaptations level of the graduates. So in the first 3 terms, our center graduated 344 persons, and 50 out of 299 persons are currently employed. Another project is also of supporting quality for the previous one. So this is about supporting women and young people for social integration and supporting them in their participation into business lives. As the previous speaker has mentioned, the matching is really important here. So our endeavors during the pandemic, as well as other projects, were very important in order to facilitate this process. So for this
support center for women and young people, we provide different types of services and the range of services to empower them, and this requires great effort. And since the day it was founded, we have provided trainings for about over 1,000 people. And at the center, hygiene kits were distributed to hundreds of people, and we've had the opportunity, thanks to this project, to reach a lot of refugees as well. So next year, I do think that this year and the next year, we're going to be focusing more on a production and marketing cooperative, and this is a project that we are for which we are collaborating with FAO, where we focus mostly on gluten-free bakery products. So a few facilities are provided to us by the municipality. And we also have Matra Social Transformation Women's Empowerment Center in collaboration with the Dutch embassy, so I had to touch upon that too. So we're talking about two projects. One is called Istihdam Ankara, Employment Ankara for the professions of future. So about employment, in this program, we find open positions and we guide young people towards suitable open positions. And also we want to invest on vocational trainings for the jobs of future, because as the employment sector and the labor market are changing, we have to keep up with such changes. So the professional or vocational trainings for the past 20 years must be converted into modern terms. So before I finish my presentation, I would like to tell you two of our main suggestions. So number one recommendation of ours is about setting objectives. So there are a lot of organizations working on similar affairs, but first we have to be able to setting up objectives and working together. Another point is that even the selection of the vocational training, or guiding them, directing graduates to potential employment, we have to find a holistic approach. So there are these are the two most important recommendations that I fundamentally wanted to touch upon. Of course, these are not projects that we carry out by ourselves. We are in collaboration with a number of institutions, the names of which you can find on this slide. And the content of the vocational trainings or the processes sometimes change. And I would also like to take this moment to thank all of our stakeholders for their work. So this is all I wanted to say for now. And if you have any questions, I would be more than glad to answer them. Thank you very much, Mr. Ömer Faruk Sarı. Especially these twinning or matching endeavors, matching employers with potential employees with the skills that are sought after by employers, is an effort that you are showing for refugees and vulnerable groups especially. And I think one of the most important things here is to focus on this matching process, but at the same time the integration of refugees to the employment market, labor market, which is a comprehensive process, because this includes psychosocial support for vulnerable groups. We're talking about language barriers, overcoming language barriers. So this doesn't only comprise of one pillar, and I really think that you expressed it in the most beautiful terms possible. So I only have one question. You were talking about jobs of the future or professions of the future. So while you were designing them, did you design them specifically by thinking about refugees, or is that going to be a service provided by the municipality and applicants can be Turkish residents or refugees? Well, our department specifically works with grants, and maybe it was visible from the presentation, but all of our projects are carried out via funding from grants. So the Professions of Future is not a project that is only conducted in Ankara, but it's about a project, areas of employment that are expected to disappear in the next decade across the world, not only in Turkey. Energy management or solar panel maintenance, they are going to gain more importance in addition to the rising ones. So we're not only focusing on refugees, of course, but they are services aimed at all residents living in Ankara. So both Turkish residents and refugees can be applicants for these projects. So when we
have application dates. The deadlines and application dates are announced at our centers and our website. But the only thing is that we are thinking about where the world is moving towards. First, we conduct research studies about them, and once we have, at first we have preliminary application. After the preliminary applications, I think it's going to be at the beginning of the next month, we're going to be accepting applications for the actual candidates. Okay, thank you very much. So moving toward, turning to Germany now. Integration, Social Services and Civil Participation Department Head, Seda Aras Turgut from Osnabrück Municipality is here with us. She is the daughter of a family migrated from Turkey to Germany in 1970s. In 2001, she graduated from Poli-Sci Department of Aachen University. She started her professional life at Aachen University. And then, in 2002, she started working at Osnabrück Municipality. There, she worked in different departments. She carried out studies in different fields. She mostly focuses on integration studies, employment for migrants and migrants' children. She organized trainings for them. And since 2015, one of her main areas of responsibility is the acceptance, integration, and adaptation of migrants in Osnabrück. She also works in many commissions, and especially one in Lower Saxony. She is responsible from international projects in many organizations, and with the sister city of Osnabrück, Çanakkale, she is working on a project with disadvantaged women. The floor is yours. Hello, thank you, and thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you. As you have heard, I was born and raised in Köln, so if you cannot understand my pronunciation properly, you have to know that German is my first language, and sometimes as I get older, sometimes it gets harder to speak completely in Turkish. So here I have my presentation. You can see it, right? So I've been working in integration as a department head at Osnabrück Municipality. So Osnabrück is in the northern region of Germany. It's an hour away from Hanover. Osnabrück has a population of 170,000, and most of the population consists of migrants, which makes up about 50,000 people. Our city has a long history of migration. So, as you have heard, we call ourselves a peaceful city, as much like our sister city of Çanakkale. After 1915s, there was a peace pact signed in Osnabrück Municipality building. So we have been working in the same field, and we have been working on integration for a long time. This Friday, for instance, we had an award ceremony. Yılmaz, in the memory of Yılmaz Akgürek, as a migrant from Ordu to Germany, he lived there. He lived in Germany for a long time, helping Turkish migrants there. That being the case, we wanted to focus on our own story of migration. So after 2015 in Germany, we started to talk about migrants with the Syrian refugees coming into Germany. We also had concepts and plans and programs that we prepared before 2015, and they were not completely corresponding with what we needed to do at that time. So refugees are sent from states to cities. So this is a complicated system, which is why I don't want to go into the details of this program because we're on limited time. So if you have any questions, please contact me whenever you want for any questions that I can answer. As you have heard, this whole system is a very properly set up, smoothly working system. So maybe it might set up an example for Turkey. Right now, we have 5,037 refugees in our city, 170 are male, and over 1,600 are women. Right now we have 12 people
only 12 children, and this number was definitely higher a few years ago. So we actually can talk about a younger population because the majority are between the ages of 25 and 49. This means for Germany that the labor market has, this is a group that with high potential to work in the German labor market. So right now the unemployment rate is merely at a 5% in Germany. There is a need for workforce, on the contrary of what we have been talking about. So overall in Germany, this need is quite high, and it's been dropping for a while now, but by 2020 we are still talking about hundreds of Syrian refugees seeking employment. So for today's topic, as German municipalities, we do not conduct direct employment programs. We collaborate with different programs. We have job centers which underwent a huge reform, left the auspices of our municipality and started to work independently, and they are working as independent job centers. So our mayor currently and some of our assembly members are also positioned at the boards of these job centers. So we do work in cooperation. When it comes to employment, municipalities specifically work with NGOs. I would like to show you an example here. So this is an example from our Migration Competence Center. So this is a concept that was specifically set up for migrants. So under this roof, we have a program including 100 people. We have 3 consultants, 6 facilitators, 6 pedagogues, social pedagogues, and they work in collaboration for the same purpose. So the first step is that you step into the door from here. So at first, you are provided with general information about German professions and employment. Within the scope of NGOs, you are provided with vocational language prep courses. At the same time, projects are developed along with refugees. There are coffee shops run by operated by the participants, also second-hand projects and garden projects. So on the second stage, we have qualification consultancy and vocational competence applications, introduction to such practices. It's very important in Germany because it's a very formalist country. Unless you have vocational training, it's very difficult for you to find a job. But once you complete your vocational training or you have extensive professional experience acquired abroad, it would be relatively easier. So for such skilled or qualified workers, there are consultancy services provided for acquiring information. So let's say that you have a diploma acquired abroad, and you can find out how you can use it in Germany. Practically speaking, so right now this is where we are. Practically speaking, the vocational practices or information or know-how starts after this step. Whatever sector we're talking about, hotel, gastronomy, food, kitchen, bakery, whatever. So much like the programs in Ankara that were listed by the previous speaker, we are talking about showing, logistics, metal, auto repair, sales, construction, painting, etc., etc. So most importantly, foreigners who have been living in Germany for a while and those who are citizens of another EU member country have to participate in the integration course so that they can apply to the Federal Bureau of Migration to Germany. So we call this a BANF course, then where they are provided with support for the integration course. So when they participate in the integration course, there are different modules that can be used in completion. So let me tell you how it works. The general integration course is a language course of 600 hours, and there is an orientation that takes about 100 hours. So each module takes 100 modules with different steps. So the first 300 hours are theoretical, and the other 300 are for development purposes, which are practical. Thanks to the language course, individuals gain the skills to fulfill their needs on by themselves and acquire the vocabulary for everyday life. If you can wrap up, we're running out of time. Oh, okay. Well, German is a very challenging language, which is why it's very important that everyone can speak German. So you can see the modules that would provide intercultural facilitation there. We also have health mentorship and self-employment support. So this is what we do. Finally, I would like to say something else. Before 2015, Germany did not allow refugees to work as registered employees. But after 2015, refugees were supported by the Department of Migration to go back to their countries when the war was over, and they were actually deported. So this meant that this completely changed because of the changes in the labor market and the employment sector. Legislation has changed too. We now have new laws concerning the labor market. There are pros and cons of such changes, but maybe I can cover this in another workshop. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, Ms. Sada. And we had a study visit to Germany, and this integration process starts with adaptation, starts with orientation courses, and then it's about vocational courses, professional courses, and then ends with integration. You actually explained it in the best possible way. I think the last topics were very important. We know that 2015 was a turning point for Germany. In 2016, as you know, there was the agreement for returns, and Germany was among the top countries in accepting refugees. And now we have a representative from Han Municipality of Belgium. Ms. Yasemin Soysal will get the mic now. She has graduated from Hungarian language in Ankara University, and since 2015 she worked in multiple municipalities, and she is now the unit head in the Han municipality. She worked in many different divisions. She works on ethnic and cultural minorities as the person in charge of women's studies. She works in immigration divisions and families and social adaptation departments. She also worked in certain Turkish associations. She worked with youth with an immigration background, and she keeps working on these fields currently as well. I greet you all from Belgium. First of all, I want to introduce Belgium to you shortly. Kingdom of Belgium has 17.5 million people. It's a Western European country, and it has two divisions with Wallon and Flemish regions, and recently, within the borders of Wallon region, there is a tiny region in the Wallon side, and the language, official language, is German as well. And for every country, they have different ministers. They have their federal governments, and they have common governments, and the federal government takes decisions for the entire country. The government has ministries for interior, foreign and safety and health, education, etc. There are 3 communities and is divided into 3 regions: the capital and the Valon and the integrated center. The Han city is where I am in the municipality is, and it's actually the French side of the Belgium. We are a tiny municipality compared to the other municipalities like Ankara, and there are multiple challenges that the immigrants needs to face, and I would like to share with you the current situation in our municipality. But I wanted to tell you how complicated and sophisticated the structure in Belgium is. I want to inform you of the current situation about refugees. The international protection application is through the International Application Center. The commissioner assesses them, and the application results in either primary or secondary protection, and they have a temporary residence permit throughout this process. And they either get primary or temporary residence, and if it is not approved, then they are informed that they need to leave the country, and they have social aid and they are given a place to stay. All of these people have free access. It is not a closed center. They have their liberty and they have all their needs met, including food, shelter, psychological support are at their fingertips. The immigrants in Belgium have a limited stay, and after 5 years they're entitled to have permanent residence if they are approved based on their orientation and assimilation center results. I want to tell you about the integration process. The integration is realized with an integration document. The recognized immigrants must be followed by an integration center, social orientation, and language. Belgian language classes, 180 hours at least, so that they have a certain level of proficiency. And if they cannot achieve that, then they need to take the next phase as well. And also they receive professional help and career guidance, and they are being forwarded to the employment agency, and throughout that time there is constant coordination. They get support for their career management. How does employment work in Belgium for refugees? There's a 4 months time for waiting. After that, they have a work permit. There are lots of institutions and agencies to encourage and guide the refugees for work, and there are lots of volunteer institutions along with government agencies working on that. And if you ask what do the municipalities do, they have a social support center, social aid center in the you need to follow this. They need to work for a certain time, and they need to comply with the article number 60, which increases the business experience of this person. The article number 60 helps them to help the unqualified refugees if the difference is too big. And the social aid center at certain times cooperate with other institutions or agencies. The municipalities create employment for them in, for example, care homes or in garden centers of the municipalities, but their employees have regular or periodical interviews to support them. If they have any language problems or issues at work, they get guidance, and then if they lack the necessary linguistic skills, they provide them with language classes a couple of times in a week. And during those times, the municipalities can consult municipalities collaborate with consultants to support the refugees and to understand what their needs are and how these needs can be met. Many refugees in Belgium obtain temporary professional experience. This is a practice still going on, and 40% of them later can be able to get permanent jobs thanks to article number 60. In the integration center, we have certain projects and studies for immigrants, migrants, and refugees, or for people who have migrated to Belgium via various ways. For their adaptation and integration to Belgium, we have multiple projects, and one of them is the BUDIC project. It's a mentoring project. When people leave their countries, flee their countries for whatever reason it may be, they are forced to leave everything they love, the people, their homes, everything behind. And as you know, they go through very hard times, and they need to find a job very soon so that they can start their lives from scratch. And during that time, not only jobs, but also other things are needed as well, like having a friend or having a dialogue with other people. This is why we started the mentorship project, so that we could match people with each other to be friends or supporters or mentors. We wanted to create a social network with volunteers and working with their friends, so that we could encourage them and we could facilitate them to contribute to the society. Could you please wrap up, Yasemin? This is something that we are doing since many years, and which is actually very successful. There are a lot of things that I wanted to share with you, but I know that we have very limited time. We have other works as well, but the most important thing is everybody talks about integration, and which is crucial, and they need to be integrated, but also in the Belgian society they need to be accepted. If the Belgian society does not accept them, no matter how much the people try to be integrated, it won't work. That is why we work on that front as well, so that the two different communities can get to know each other and can get acquainted with one another. That's why we organize certain activities. Thank you so much to all my colleagues, and I wish you a good day. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Yasemin, especially just like Seda, especially you told us the integration of refugees in the Belgian job market, employment market. Seda told us about the integration process, and similarly you told us how the integration process starts and how they obtain a residence permit and where the municipality becomes more active, and the employment agency's cooperation with the municipality and supporting the refugees during that process and keeping supporting them after they get employed as well was very important. And now we will have Halil Ibrahim Akıncı from Sultanbeyli Municipalities Social Services Division. He started to work as a officer in law enforcement in 1983, and then he switched to the municipality. He was a director in many different divisions, like in the building division, strategic development division, and currently he is the director of social support services. He's married with 3 children, and he is the general coordinator of the Support and Solidarity for Immigrants Association. The mic is yours. You didn't unmute yourself. Thank you so much, and I would like to greet all the participants. I want to present you in a quick fashion. We have participants from abroad. Sultanbeyli is on the Asian side of Turkey, and we have 20,000 refugees, and we have 350,000 people. It's a mid-sized province, and it is a place where immigrants from Balkans populated, and then other people from other parts of Anatolia moved in, and then it is also hosting people from Afghanistan, Syria, Iraq, and other places, and the total population is now 366,000 people. The temporary protection law has given the authority to various ministries, but currently the municipalities are not legally authorized by law to act for the refugees and immigrants. So the municipalities, because of the current situation, cannot refrain from taking action about these issues, and legally we have an association, the Association for Refugees, which is not a governmental association but works in cooperation with government, and this association has 24 different topics that we work about refugees, and some of them are in cooperation with Ministry of Health and Ministry of Education. For example, the Ministry of Health allocated us a location that we have a polyclinic for refugees health services. We aim to solve the problems of the refugees, and I want to talk a bit about the concept of refugees because the refugee is a term that we can only officially give to people coming from West. The other ones, by law, cannot be called a refugee. The major thing we lack in Turkey is lack of data. The immigration agency has some data, but the other agencies need to collect their own data. In our own works, we try to collect data street by street, house by house. This is very precious for us. We work well with the public institutions and also with private institutions, with the academia, with universities, with national NGOs. And I would like to thank to Ms. Seda and Ms. Yasemin, because we're able to do this with the EU funds, and the taxpayers of the European countries enable us to make this happen. I want to talk about employment now because we have a very limited time. First of all, about employment, we had a very serious research about the labor market. How do the countries and the companies look at this? And we did a research with 120 companies, and in Ümraniye and Sancaktepe and 4 other 6 provinces with a population about 2 million were subject to our research. And what did we see? 13% of these companies had refugees as employees, and 44% had applied for refugees, but they didn't have any refugee employees. And when we asked them, why don't you have any, then they said it was their personal preferences, that they didn't trust in, they didn't trust refugees, and they said it causes challenges because of their qualifications in their homeland does not translate into our country's context. And we noticed that there's a major prejudice about the refugees. Also, there is another approach, unfortunately, of being anti-immigrants and anti-refugees, and some of them said that it was difficult in terms of procedures, and they said that they were under temporary protection and they needed to pay a certain amount of money to get a work permit, and the employees don't want to pay this. The procedures are quite challenging because it's done in Ankara centrally, and they don't want to delay the job applications, and whatever kind of demands they have, and they want production, and they want machinery operators, waiter, and they have different needs. I have very limited time, so I'm gonna, and 65% of refugees are secondary school graduates, and 12% are high school graduates, and most 34% of are blue collar, and 20% is unqualified, and 11% is white collar, and 17% are yellow collar sales people and tellers and customer representative. In Sultanbeyli Municipality, we established a career center, and without any discrimination, we're doing everything jointly with them. And what do we do in this career center? We have career coaching and mentoring activities, and then we work in terms of employment. We have supervision and mentoring, and we work on creating a network for employers looking for employees. We have social cooperatives. And about career coaching, our work continues. We're not on the field yet, but in about 2 months, we will facilitate this for the refugees. Our mentoring division started to work in the last couple of months. We deliver services for high school students and especially for their university education and what they want to do to achieve their career goals in the future. In the employment division, we give also counseling and guidance. Since 2018, we have helped 420 people to get employed. We help them to obtain work permits. We also help them to get their work permits to follow their applications electronically. We do not only serve the Sultanbeyli region, we deliver services to the entire Anatolian side of Istanbul, including other provinces. And also we have the HEP project for supporting them with economic opportunities. We have created permanent jobs for refugees in government offices. If I have time, I would like to continue. You have 1 more minute. We have vocational courses and trainings, just like Ms. Gökçe explained in the best possible way, for matching people, the employees and employers. For the last 3 months, we had more than 1,000 job applications, and this many people asked us to get jobs, but it's very difficult to match these people, the employers and employees. We also give trainings for competence building. In terms of vocational trainings, we work with the Vocational Development Center. If there are people out of the educational system, or if there are certain members of the youth who can't go to school because of family pressures, get an international certificate for certain vocations. And this is something that helps them the most. Also, in terms of registering and licensing small businesses, 313 small businesses got support from us for registration and licensing. And in terms of the cooperatives, it will be an important year for us next year, and we have also founded a social cooperative that many women are producing and learning vocational skills, and they also contribute to their family budget. The major circle that created most benefit was this cooperative, because it helped them to overcome the traumas they were subjected to, and they also managed to create income for their households. Thank you so much, Mr. Halil Ibrahim. Thank you so much for all you have shared with us. And being active in 24 fields and having a holistic approach is very valuable. So this research is very precious as well. Checking out what you have available at hand before actually presenting a service is very important. You touched many topics actually. The career center, consultancy, entrepreneurship, career coaching, and mentoring. I think mentoring is also an interesting topic. Matching them with the university students was special. Also, the social cooperative initiative that you mentioned, especially for women within the fragile, vulnerable groups among the refugees, as you said, social cooperatives is very important. Social cooperatives are very important, and that is a very great piece of information you shared with us. We have very limited time. If we have any questions, now is the time. We have a question from our audience to Gökçe. In the recent years, in the employment field, the women and refugees are in a disadvantaged position. There are discussions about this with a basic income allocation. What would you say about this? This base income practice is not an employment market policy. It's a social policy. In terms of social policy, to set a base, I believe these are very important. In Turkey, there are different items, there are different topics that people who are not married or who are not working are eligible for certain types of social aid. But some of these aids are contingent on the condition of women not working. This actually weakens them in their status. But in terms of labor market, if we look from this perspective, this weakens the labor market, and we need to have a balance. We need to certain benefits and certain competences that participating in the labor force brings, the social adaptation, feeling useful to the society, the emotional satisfaction of actually contributing to the society must be also be taken into account. Let's not forget this aspect as an economist who works on labor market dynamics. Thank you so much. My last question to our participants, especially to the representatives of municipalities. We have had a very intensive period with COVID-19 that we were stuck at home, and now with this slowly being over, we're trying to adapt again. How did this COVID period impact your works? Let me start, if you allow me. The COVID-19 period, of course, impacted our institutions differently than the others because we deliver direct service to the citizens. So we never worked at home since March 2020 because we deliver the services to the disadvantaged people, and many people like us continued to work actively. And the trainings that we give, 3 or 3.5 months with CNC and textile or cooking trainings, are face-to-face by definition. We had language courses with the adaptation office. We have weekly practice courses, language courses. They were banned because of COVID and we switched to online, but there were difficulties, mostly talking about immigrants and refugees, and we noticed that they had certain difficulties. But when we look at the profiles of the immigrants, in the recent years, most of the refugees coming to Belgium are at least high school graduates, so they didn't have any challenges accessing online resources. 50, 60 years ago, they were less educated, but now they have higher level of education, and we try to help them to have access to computers, and the schools try to help the students without computers. We used to always work behind our computers before, but now we started together with refugees and immigrants in parks and gardens, and we actually noticed that this was more efficient and more productive. So we sometimes visited them on site in their homes so that we could see what was going on. Thank you so much. Is there anything else you want to add, Seda? Because as far as I understand, in this practical trainings, there was a major break. The other things were done online. What did you do in Germany? We had the same experiences with Turkey and Belgium. No difference at all. The major difference, or from a positive perspective, in the psychosocial consultancy, this helped us to do something positive. Our state is really big, and some of the people were commuting 2-3 hours train rides to come to work. So now they were able to work from home. Of course, it's nice to gather face to face, but for certain people who lived outside in the villages or rural areas, it was a major advantage. We want to continue this both online and also offline, but online helped certain people. It was a positive change for people who don't live in the city. So actually with COVID-19, this online practice will be used in the future as well. We are at the very last minutes now. I think it's an important question. In İşkur, what are your suggestions in Employment Agency of Turkey, İşkur? What are your suggestions for delegation of the authority to local governments? I can tell you that normally in local governments will be more suitable for taking over İşkur's responsibilities, because the local governments can act much faster. They have more flexibility and they're much more quicker in responding. So if they can see this in terms of the public benefit and in terms of better employment options, it would be much better. The vocational and professional consultancy and guidance must be carried out by professionals and professional institutions. If this can be set in the municipality environment, then it can be implemented. But I don't see this as just a well-intending practice, but it needs to be a very professional approach. It should be done by expert professionals. Other than that, I don't think the delegation of authority to municipalities or to agencies with no expertise and specialization or no qualification about employment would be beneficial. What we do now is only an altruistic approach because of the de facto needs of our nation or of our people, but actually it doesn't have a legal background, and the time that we are given and the cost that we face, the machinery and equipment costs, is not met because this is just a well-intending behavior. After delegation of authority, we also need to transfer resources in terms of human resources, and we would like to thank all our panelists for sharing all their information, and this is one of the last. We will have the closing session very soon. Thank you so much. I hope it has been beneficial.